My name is Ole Dammegård. My body was born in Denmark, but I lived most of my life in other countries. And in the early 80s, I got very, very interested in the JFK assassination, almost to I would say almost where I became obsessed with trying to find out the real truth, because I, on a very early stage, found out that what we were being told was an absolute lie, and that everyone with some kind of brain that looked into it would see it very obviously, even though the official story that was being pumped at us was so far from the truth that it was ridiculous. And the JFK assassination made me, I spent thousands of hours looking into that. Then that brought me into the world of the Robert Kennedy assassination, the assassination of Martin Luther King, Malcolm X, and so on. And I read everything I could get hold of. I mean, this was way before the internet, way before the JFK movie. Many of these documentaries that are now available, nothing like that was. So I went to England to try and get books. I went to the States. I tried to do everything I could. Not because I had an agenda or a plan. It was just that I felt very compassionate about finding out what actually happened. And the deeper I got, the scarier it got as well, because I just couldn't believe the depth and the layers of conspiracies that were on top of each other involved in some of these top assassinations. Then, over the years, the longer that I continued, I started seeing almost like a bullet point list, like a template they were using. Not that I found it in a paper form, but I could see very distinct similarities between many of these assassinations. Not that they looked identical in the way they were carried out on the street level, but the same template with a patsy, a lone crazy guy that they were blamed for it, with an investigation that seemed totally incapable of doing their job, pointing to the official story and the patsy and nothing else, and then followed up by commissions that seemed to be spending thousands of hours not being able to find out any kind of real valid evidence, instead just trying to seemingly get us to forget what actually happened. So at that point, when I started to see this bullet point list, I started writing my own book about the JFK assassination, just for myself, to try and keep all of these facts separated and see. And it was during that time also that I found that some people in some very credible books were working for the CIA. In other very credible books, the very same person was working for the FBI. Other researchers, very credible, showed that they were involved with the mob. And other people showed that they were working for the Secret Service and so on. So I got so confused, because I thought, I all feel that a trust in these researchers, but how is this possible? And then over the years I found out that this is exactly what is going on. And many of these agents were financed by the CIA, funded by the FBI, working at times for the mob, and sometimes with the Secret Service. It was just in and out. And over the years I found that the CIA and the mob are just different sides of the same coin, and the FBI there to help cover the whole thing up. And I really started to change the meaning of the name CIA, FBI, and so on, to get a more appropriate look at what's going on. I called CIA the Cocaine Import Agency, which is exactly what they are. It is an agency for hire for businesses, franchises, and major corporations. It's not for the protection. On the contrary, FBI call them fraud, bribery, and intimidation, which is exactly what they do. I'm not saying every single agent, but the very core elements of these organizations with a very, very dark and sinister agenda, tools being used by the power structure that is behind also the New World Order, what is called the New World Order. So once I started seeing how these templates were being used, boom, the Swedish Prime Minister was gone down in 1986, February 1986. And I living in Sweden. I thought I lived in the perfect country. Harmony, peace, democracy, no corruption. I could trust the police. I waited for a green light, and when I crossed the street, you know, everything was in order, beautiful. And I totally believed, tragic that the Prime Minister was killed. It was a trauma for the country. But of course, the Swedish police would do a proper investigation, most probably find the guy and sort it. Months went by. Suddenly I started feeling the same smell from the other ones. Something weird is going on here. Something rotten is going on in the state of, not Denmark this time, Sweden. And so I was sort of like, I see the exact same things happening in Sweden as in the Robert Kennedy, the Martin Luther King, John F. Kennedy, and so on. And it's like, how is this possible if it's not the same power behind it? How can they use the same template? So I thought, I need to test this, because I had like 20 odd years of history with the other assassinations. So I could just say, okay, they've done this, they've done that, they've done this, they've done that. So, and they did the same in Sweden. So if they're using this template, this is the next point that will happen. I cannot remember what that was. Some kind of new evidence they found or something like that to distract. So I said, if that's it, then this will happen. 2 weeks later, that exact thing happened in Sweden. It blew me away, because my whole existence in the country of Sweden just turned upside down, because I thought, how in a country that is openly a democracy, with a police where everybody can be trusted, is this possible? So I started looking at the assassination from a totally different point of view, from a connection with the other ones. Is this possible? And if so, the good thing I had was all of these years that had passed, so I could see the development, where it was going, where it was leading. So I started seeing, okay, instead of looking at the site of the assassination, which most researchers are still to this very day, they're standing looking at where the guy was shot, saying, was it the patsy? Was it not? Was it the patsy? Was it not? Just like 9/11. Was it an inside job? Was it not? There is a massive conspiracy behind that and that and that. So I started looking from a very much higher point of this whole thing. And then in the early 90s, I had the pleasure of meeting a man by the name of David Icke. He was totally unknown at that time, more or less unknown. At least I had never heard of him. I think we were like 80 people paying in the audience. He said at that time that he couldn't even fill a phone booth, because nobody was interested, nobody was that. But I went there, and at that time I had quite a clear picture of what was happening on a street level, but everything was pointing upwards, like in a pyramid shape, but in a fog. I was stumbling around in a fog. I could not connect the dots. David Icke came in. During 2 hours, he explained the power structure, international power structure, and he just put the top of the pyramid in place right in front of my eyes. It was like the most amazing 2 hours of my life. I was like, wow, the magnitude. I had no idea about the connections, how these power structures are, how it's so connected at the top. And I also had no idea what I was getting myself into. So after that, I moved to Stockholm. I had moved already to Stockholm. I got involved with this very small group of private investigators, normal people who were just very worried about what was going on in Sweden. And I totally devoted my life to find out the real truth, what had happened. I started driving a bus. I was working in warehouses. I was cleaning toilets. Whatever kept me alive gave me an income while doing this. And then every spare hour I had, I was tracking down the truth in whatever area. That took me down It took me like 12 hours, 12 years of my life I was doing that. And it took me into a very, very dark world of where I identified more or less all of them, the people involved. I tracked down assassins, foreign sleeping agents. I mean, things like you see in a cheap B movie. It suddenly was my life. I was surrounded by these people. Very, very odd experience. And then 2 of my friends in this small group that was also helping to look into this died very mysteriously. I had a visit at home. Freaked me out. It is very, when you see the power behind, the ruthlessness, that the dark forces behind these operations, they do not care. They see you as a problem. They solve you as a problem by getting rid of the problem in mostly a very violent way. So it's very, very frightening. So after my 2 friends died, which was awful, awful, I decided it was time for me to leave Sweden. So I left with my girlfriend, her children. We left, we moved to Spain. I've been living there for 15 years now. And I wrote a book called Coup d'etat in slow motion about the Palme assassination. It's more than 1,000 pages. It's 2 volumes where I, in a great, great detail, totally put together the whole jigsaw. Not my opinion. I'm putting the jigsaw in front of people. Then the reader can make up their own mind. But I believe that I identified more or less everyone involved. Their photos, names, maps, documents, letters from the assassins, all of these things right there. But this book has never been published. Nobody dared. I gave it to Michael Moore's Swedish agent. He had it for a month. He gave it back, said, if you publish this, you're going to be sued from here to the moon. So that was sort of not so encouraging. So I didn't know what to do with it. And so I had it there until 2012, where for some reason suddenly it felt like I need to get this off my shoulders, because I was the only one sitting with a lot of this information, and that makes you a sitting target, especially before info that was collected before the internet. When you were the only one, so easy to get rid of you. So I felt very uncomfortable with that. So what I decided to do was I set up like a network with friends all over the world. And I said, please, I have a PDF here. Within the next hour, I'm going to send it to you. Please download it, send it to all your friends, send it, spread it everywhere, and get the info out there. They agreed very kindly. Boom, I sent it off, and whew, within a few hours, it was in hundreds of locations all over the world. And I felt extremely relieved. What I did not know was that this would start a tidal wave of interest internationally. And radio stations started contacting me. I think I had like 30,000 downloads for free. I gave it out for free. And by now, I don't know, I've done hundreds of international radio station interviews. I do that on a weekly basis. Because one of the ways to protect yourself is either you go stealth, you're totally anonymous, you shut up and you do whatever you do, but do not show what you got on your hands, sort of like. Or you need the spotlight. You need to get the spotlight on you for security, because if they take you out when the spotlight is there, that can backfire on them. Because the last thing they want to is create martyrs. They know the power of someone like Victor Jara, Che Guevara, these type of figures, Martin Luther King. It can backfire. And then that person becomes like an icon, much bigger than the person itself, that can be disregarded as a joke or manipulated or whatever. So they're very aware of creating that. So after that, and during the years, I've moved from top assassinations and into the area of so-called terror acts, 9/11, Oklahoma City, the Oslo mass shootings, all the mass shootings in the States. I don't know how many I looked into, and so on. And I've been welcomed as a top expert globally by many, like Professor Jim Fetzer and many. I say that humbly, not bragging. It's just that I'm so devoted. And one of the things I try to do is, when something happens, is get on location, because it's once you're there that you can get the emotional connection with the families, victims, because that isn't, I need that to get the drive to take the risks, because this is not a pleasant area to get into, because these dark forces want people like me, as they welcome me as much as a boil in the butt. They do not like to be exposed. It is in the dark that they rule. It is there, from there they can control these different actions and so on. So when you put the spotlight on them, they freak out and they hit back. So my approach is, since I'm only an ordinary guy trying to do my best to get the world as much back in balance as I can contribute with, is to totally non-violent, also totally fearlessly expose what is going on, expose their methods, to defuse it for them. Because the thing is, the people, I say they, I don't have time to go into the exact details of who they are, but I'm talking about the same power structure as behind the New World Order. They are using a very, very few templates that have been, I think there was the old Romans that came up with them. One of the most famous one is the problem, reaction, solution. It is the method that has been used by the elite few for thousands of years. They've always had the same problem. How can an elite few that have selected themselves as the ones, how can you control the masses? The answer is through fear. You need to create an outer enemy, divert the attention away from yourself, create an outer enemy so that you can secretly create a problem, because what you want is the reaction from the population, and the reaction you want is a total freak out of fear. Ah! Help me, we're going under, we're under attack. And then I, the one that secretly created the problem, will come to you and say, well, I have the solution for you. And then the people freaking out will say, oh, thank God, you're our savior. I will be looked upon as a hero, and they will not understand what happened. Problem, reaction, solution. And the solution that we're being served every single time is a solution that you would never ever have accepted had it not been for the problem. Problem, reaction, solution. And this is like how, when you make a pie, you have certain ingredients like water, flour, whatever it is you need to make a pie. It is the same here. So you will see the same thing repeating itself again and again. You can change the flavor, you can change the color, but it's still the same ingredients. And one of these things that they use against us to control us is what is called false flag operations. A false flag operation is an old naval term where in the old days you had the big naval empires, and I mean, they could rule, they could just go and rape, plunder, whatever they wanted to. But in those days as well, you had problems with neighboring countries, you had negotiation with different nations. So for you just to go in and massacre a small little country would not do your name so much good. So instead, what they did was they made themselves look at as a victim. So what they did was they took the enemy, so-called enemies, nation, their flag, put on one of their own ships, then let that ship attack themselves and say, oh my God, we're under attack, we have to defend ourselves, and then invasion, rape, plunder. Justified. I would very much suggest that this is what we see now on a daily basis. The repetition of these operations has just escalated like on an incredible level. And In the States, the major problem the New World Order, the agenda have, is that the population is armed. So that is where we see the so-called mass shootings. Lone crazy guys killing lots of people. So what is the problem? What is the solution to all of these lone crazy guys? I would say, if that was true, maybe some mental, the help mentally ill people so that we solve these problems, that we don't have these things. No, here we always have, it's the weapon. And it's always automatic weapons. They want to get rid of those. The reason also in this recipe of false flag, the lone crazy guy, is because they want him alone, because then by law there's no conspiracy. And then if he dies, which he always does more or less, or admits, then you don't have to look into it. Case closed. Thank you, folks. Exit to the right. Thank you and goodbye. Go back to sleep. And the reason why they want him crazy is because then there's no motive. He was crazy. He just shot. He just blew up. He whatever. So that is why I would say the next time you hear about a lone crazy guy or deranged or whatever, watch out. There's one coming. So the mass shootings are there. Then you have other type of false flag operations. And one of the things is that after 9/11, you started having, I would say, the major problem that these people had, or the dark forces, was that every time you kill someone, you have a mother, the mother of a child, who, when a mother loses a child, doesn't matter if that child is 54 and a grown-up man, when the child is dead, that mother has nothing to lose. They will not back down. They will breathe down your neck until they find out the truth. You will see that in many Latin American countries where they've done military coups. You will see it everywhere. The mothers are the problem. So I've spoken to CIA sources I have and insiders who've been involved in false flags as well. And they say that it came to a point after 9/11 where they decided, we can't do this anymore. We need to get rid of these women and get, so that we can focus on what we're supposed to do. So they started using crisis actors, where they set together a team with a marketing agency that comes up with slogans and logos and all of these things, with military experts, with people that are good with explosives. We're talking like a film set, with crisis actors, people that are good at running around looking terrified, or being good at looking dead and with blood on them, these type of things. And also directors who control the whole thing. And like a group that can be transported from location to location and play this out in front of cameras, being pumped out through media as real events. And you will see the reporters that are also reporting from these things are very often totally directly involved in this operation. And they will do the problem, reaction, solution right in front of you. Nowadays, because they know the concentration span of a normal person is not so long, so they need to do it like within 30 seconds. Problem, they're standing on the side, there's smoke behind them, dead bodies. They always need dead women and dead children. That's the one. Not old guys or cows or blown up tractors. Women, children, nuns, nurses, missionaries are some of the ingredients in this one. To get the emotions going. They want the emotional, so you don't use your brain. And so the reporter will say, oh, this awful thing has happened. Awful, awful, awful. They will interview a victim saying, they behaved like animals. They chopped the children and ate them or whatever, to get your reaction saying, oh, that's awful, that's awful. And then they will come in with a solution. Wait for it. I tell you, when you see on the news something like this happening, wait for the solution. We need stricter gun control here. We need more securities at the airport. The reporter is saying, who is the reporter? The reporter's job is there to just say, this happened. No, they will say, my God, now we need to ban forks as well. And the time has come, spoons, maybe they're cutting it in like that. And every single time they carry out these false flag operations, you have to pay. You have to pay by giving up your human rights, your civil rights. You have to accept more and more surveillance, body scanners, cameras that are surveillance, giving out your fingerprint, your eye scan. I mean, my God, we're in an Orwellian world now. Compare the world before 9/11, when this really took off, and now. It's like, whoa, you cannot even imagine. And all of these police, even here in Copenhagen, I saw at the airport with military, you know, like machine guns and bulletproof vests, all of it based on, I would say, fake terror. I have devoted some 30 years of my life to this. I've taken all of those, I've had people die around me, I've put myself on the line of fire so many times. I do not even know if there is such a thing as a real terrorist. Not the way we have been told that a terrorist looks. The real terrorists are the ones that you see on TV every day, saying things that you want to hear, nice suits, looking very civilized, having nice long prime minister titles and stuff, being members in groups like the Bilderberg Group, the Council on Foreign Relations, Committee of 300, the Trilateral Commission, standing there looking very civilized, but carrying these things out with us as victims. Not on in my world. So I believe that we live in a world that is beautiful, but we're being pumped through this media, through this black box in front of you, making us, trying to get us into fear mode, so that we would say, oh my God, we need martial law, we need a world army, we need total protection, everything is going down the drain. I would say absolutely not. They are freaking out because there's more and more spotlight being aimed at them. So it's almost like the dragon has already been slain, I would say, and what we're seeing is the tail going all over the place. And this is also why these operations become so sloppy, worse and worse and worse. I mean, now it's the last one, the TV shooting in Virginia. Oh, come on. It's like, oh, the guy who pumped, you know, that is supposed to shoot the TV presenter, you know, you see the gun, blah, 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 blah. And if you freeze the frames, you will see he's got a blue shirt, he's got a white hand, he's got a gun that doesn't even eject the bullet, whatever it's called, the blank ones. And then you see that he drops the camera, the dead camera guy drops the camera, but very gently so the camera doesn't get hurt. And then they say that the camera caught the murderer in one of the frames. And then you have a black guy in a black outfit aiming at them like this. Oh, sorry, blue shirt, black shirt, make up your mind. White skin, black skin, come on guys, it's getting ridiculous. Give it up. We've had enough. Give it up.